Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. Stephen and I are together in the Cleveland studio in what I would describe as a very eventful week in the world and in our lives, but we won't get into that too much. I don't think we will. All right, how you doing, man?
Good.
Ready to start talking about my boy Hunter Biden?
Hunter Biden. What about Hunter Biden? Let's talk about
Hunter Biden has pled guilty to 2 misdemeanor charges related to tax issues.
Failure to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And possessing a firearm while being a known drug user.
Now, he struck a plea deal where he's basically going to face probation and other commitments, and they're going to drop the gun charge and basically sentence him to probation. Mm-hmm. I have said multiple times, and I know we're on the same page here, I don't really give a fuck about Hunter Biden. Right. And I had this conversation, we met pre-show, and I was talking to some friends, we were at a bar, and I was talking to some friends, and they started talking about Hunter Biden, and I jumped in, and they were like, oh, why are you going to be this way? You just love Joe Biden so much. I'm like, no, I'm just here to say I don't give a fuck about Hunter Biden. And I stand by that.
Well, I mean, I pointed that out a long time ago, at least a year ago, if not longer. He doesn't hold office. He's not a part of the Biden administration. So I don't care if he's guilty. Okay, fine. Like whatever. Like they got him. You charge him. You're investigating him. So people are like, oh well, if this were anybody else, like, all right, yeah.
Which is funny to hear that argument from certain people.
It is funny to hear that argument, but at the same time, yeah, guys. I mean, can we stop acting like we don't have a multi-tier justice system? Right, like you're just saying that the virtue signal.
Thank you for saying multi-tiered and not two-tiered, because it is definitely multi-tiered.
Yeah, no, that's
good choice of words. That's why I give you credit.
And it was intentional because you've got the super wealthy, you've got political figures, you've got
celebrities,
you've got all these other all these groups
connected
at the top,
people in different neighborhoods and suburban areas,
right? And then there's local politics and money and all that other stuff that gets involved. So we don't have this black and white, just straight shooting justice system.
Correct.
That people like to virtue signal like we do, right? Like it's just whenever it's convenient for you, to use it, then you will, right? And so. My thing is, if this is what they found, now look, there's also rumors coming out, and here's the other frustrating thing about where we are, right? So news comes out that Hunter Biden agrees to a plea deal, right? Yep. Everyone's like, oh, he's a criminal, he's doing drugs and whatever. So they bust him, and it's just like, all right, yeah, he didn't report this to his taxes. He had a gun. We know he was using drugs in the same video, so we're going to hit him with this charge. And that's it, right? So it's just like, all right, well, I mean, you got your justice. Like, what do you want? Right. You want him to go to jail for 20 years? Like, what are we doing? But then as soon as that comes out, you've got someone, IRS whistleblower. Well, there were so many other charges that could have been, but the IRS decided not to do it because they wanted to protect Joe Biden. And this person doesn't have any proof of this particular statement or hasn't shown it to this point. But it is now being reported by all your conservative talking heads that the IRS and the DOJ are now folding and bending the knee to Biden and trying to protect him with their investigations into Hunter Biden. And it's just, look, if that's happening, that's obviously disturbing. And if Joe Biden, was bribed and used his son or his son used him and Joe Biden knew about it while Joe Biden was in office, because the other thing, too, is I'm seeing reports Joe Biden took money from such and such company in Ukraine in 2017. I'm like, well, guys, why the fuck do we care? He wasn't in office in 2017. I don't know if you remember. Right? Like, Obama and Biden were out of office in 2016. They lost to Donald J. Trump.
Yes.
So at that point in time, Joe Biden was doing what Donald J. Trump normally is doing. Right? I mean, because if
you're money off of...
Right. Now, I guess there's an argument like, well, he, maybe he's got security clearance or whatever, so maybe that somehow precludes him. But And if it's a business dealing, right? Even if it is, bullshit, right? Like he's a consultant, they pay him $10 million, but he never goes to Ukraine and consults on anything. All right, well, whatever that's their deal. But is that really corruption, or is that just business, right? Like,
or could it be corrupt but not illegal?
Right, exactly, right. And
because it's probably that. It's probably maybe corrupt or sleazy, shady, but not illegal.
I mean, fine, corrupt, but I mean, it But if it's a private business to a private business, is that really corruption, right? And what are they paying for? And it's just like, and you can make the argument like Joe Biden knew he was going to run for president, so they paid him money, whatever. But if the money was reported, and it was reported, the amount of money was reported on Joe Biden's taxes. But there are issues with how it was reported. I don't think he either properly disclosed the source or didn't disclose the source or something like that.
Talking about Hunter or Joe?
No, Joe Biden.
Okay.
Right. So there could be an issue there, and I do believe that some of these claims of Joe Biden receiving improper money, from China, Ukraine, whatever, go back to 2013. But a majority of what I've seen is that the big bulk was in. They said it was $11 million. Yeah, they said it was $11 million from 2013 to 2017, but $10 million in 2017, right? Like, so theoretically, like there could have been $1 million in there between. Like, so either way, if he was in office and taking money illegally, then fucking roast him. I don't care.
Burn him, yeah. Fucking
burn him. There's a lot of questions about once him and Obama were out of office, what he did, right? And if it's even applicable, because I don't think off the top of my head, I don't know what you're going to charge him with unless it's tax related, because again, he didn't report it, or maybe he didn't report it properly or whatever, and that seems to be the angle that they're taking. But even still, not properly not properly disclosing the source of an amount of money.
Especially if it's a foreign source. Then this gets into my level. I don't know shit.
Well,
about
yeah, I mean, it's
taxes
just there's a penalty for it, but it's not the type of thing that someone's gonna go to jail, right? Someone's like it's a process error, really, is how it's looked at. But it's just, I don't know. Like, so people are obviously trying to make a mountain out of a molehill potentially, but I will say, investigate him, right? If there's a paper trail, follow the fucking money. If the money says he's dirty, then fucking burn him. I don't care. Yeah, right? Like I mean, and I do care. It's unfortunate, but ultimately, like I'm not rooting for any. Like I'm rooting for them to succeed, but I want them to do it the right way. And if they're not doing it the right way, I want them out. Right? But I don't care if it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever.
Right, and I'm not even going to get into all the whataboutisms, because there's so many out there that it's just a joke. But I hate that style of argument, so I won't make one right now.
But that's all it is. That's all, like, and again, we're so connected to social media, which that's the problem, right? Is that the whataboutism argument is fought very aggressively on social media. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then a lot of the people that you end up debating, like whether you're at a bar or what have you, those people are getting their information from social media. So you still end up basically fighting a war by proxy with social media. But that's what's happening. And you've got a very small percentage of people that are controlling the narrative for any particular group, but they're able to disseminate the information and the messages very quickly and very efficiently, so it gets out quickly, and then all of a sudden, a majority of that faction they're all literally speaking the same language and saying the same words with the same sentence structure.
And we've had a few discussions about this on a personal level recently, where it's people just read the headline. Like, I said you something and said, here's this, and I qualified it with, all I read was like the first paragraph. The first paragraph is more than a lot of people give. They read a headline and it's Hunter Biden exposed for blah, 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 or Donald Trump exposed for blah, and all they see is the headline. And how many times have we talked about it on the show where you read the headline and then you read the story and go, okay, yes, Hunter Biden did something kind of bad, but he didn't murder children in the street and laugh about it and drink their blood to make Hillary Clinton younger by transferring power like the Highlander. Sorry.
There can only be one.
There can be, yeah.
There can be only one.
There can be only one, yes.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
here's my thing. I guess like this really shouldn't. I mean, this should be a story because it's the president's son, but this also should be the end. But this is not the end, right? Like, so now we got to investigate all his business dealings, and obviously conservatives are looking to make any connection they can to Biden so they can use that for impeachment, and I think that it's a similar situation to Trump. I think that with Trump, the whole thing with the Russians. There was something there, but not enough there, right? And so, Trump didn't go to Russia and make a deal with Putin where Putin said, I'm going to get you elected and this is how we're going to do it. What happened was the Russians, they knew Donald Trump inside and out, and they manipulated him easily by just paying him compliments. Yeah. Right? And then,
copying him rooms and maybe getting
all that sort of stuff, but then,
on clickers or whatever.
So all right, that's how you appeal to Trump, but then they luck out when some of the people that Trump hires around him are easily manipulated, all looking for a power grab. None of them are patriots. They're just basically political mercenaries. So you get a Paul Manafort, you get a Roger Stone, you get the what was the Greek kid? Papadopoulos, right? And so they're all doing side deals with Russians and Ukrainians and all this other stuff and, funneling money into the campaign, funneling information back to the Russians. And so there was something there with his campaign interacting with Russia that was legitimate. People went to jail. Like we saw transcripts of conversations. We know that there was something there, but it wasn't enough to rise to the Donald Trump planned this out, was this mastermind who planned by, he was going to use the Russians to help elevate himself to president of the United States, and I don't even think Putin planned it. They're just, I think they saw an opportunity.
They were to stir the pot and see what happens.
Right.
Very little investment for potentially high reward.
Right, exactly. And you could argue
and no risk. If it goes fucking crazy, fine. Right. They were probably prepared for Hillary, but we're like, let's see
what we could do. Right. And so there was something there, but it wasn't enough to be, I can take you down. Right. They tried, but it backfires on them. Right. And so this with Biden probably goes the same way. Right. Like you keep pulling at strings. Eventually you're going to find something just enough, right, that's going to raise enough of a question about Biden where they can easily get, a majority in the House and in the Senate to where they need to get to impeach him.
Yeah, I mean they're going to try, but they've got no look. Yeah, swing away, Lauren Boebert. She's talking about,
Look, I shouldn't say where they're going to get enough, but it's going to be enough to at least make this a topic of conversation in the media.
Yes, it will do that for sure. Now, and on social media, it will be everything. And there's been so much of a back and forth, like, you impeached our guy, so we're going to impeach yours, because we're apparently seventh graders as a country. Yes.
And that was the risk, that when that whole thing with articles of impeachment for Trump went down, what did I say? I was like, look, if you're going to do this, you better make sure that you're able to cut his head off, because if not, right, then you're going to start this thing, right? And this is the thing, right? Like, this isn't for any other thing than they did it to us, we're going to do it to them. We don't like him, right? And because they don't care if it actually happens. They don't care but what they do care about is that it sends out the signal that they're on the attack. They know that media is going to talk about it. Fox is going to make sure that they put it out. MSNBC is going to lose their shit and say it's the worst thing ever, right? They know OAN will pick it up and all that other shit, and then it'll be blasted out there, and it'll be just one more thing to distract from the fact that they don't actually have any useful policy.
Right. It's fuel for their righteous indignation.
Yes.
And it fuels the masses for them.
And could it get across the finish line to where they're able to actually impeach him? I would say no, it shouldn't, but I don't know. It's weird times.
No, it is weird times.
I mean, I don't think they can because they have to go through the Senate to be able to do it, right?
Right.
Or no. No, the articles. The articles are into the House, and
then the Senate
so
conviction
theoretically they could do it in the House, but
even then, I don't even think they have that chance, because while they only need, I don't even know if it's a simple majority or 60% or whatever, but they don't have the votes. And look, Joe Biden, you've expressed your opinion on him before. I'm not as anti-Biden as you, but I'm not a fan. I think he's actually done a fairly good job if you look at it analytically.
From a policy standpoint, he's done some good things for sure. He's definitely had some blunders, but the problem is that he came with baggage that made him vulnerable.
Sure.
And for me, that was the non-starter, right? Because for this very fucking reason, right? Now, they were going to look for anything that they could with whoever. If they got beat, they were going to look for anything they could on whoever was in there. So they were going to make it hell on whoever was there, right? And you could argue, well, it had to be Joe Biden because, yeah, he's got baggage, but he's got the gumption,
the name recognition, and the the geographic appeal.
What I'm telling you though is, I don't know if Joe Biden can pull it off again. Now, I feel stronger. I have more confidence in Joe Biden winning a second term today than I did maybe a few months ago.
Interesting. Okay, interesting.
Right, like Trump's legal situation is not good.
I didn't go to law school. How do you quantify not good? No, it's ridiculous. He's indicted in 2 different cases, 37 counts in one. He's acting like a fucking psycho on social media.
Well, so some of that stuff, like the indictment in New York, and I don't put a lot of. I think that was a waste of time and energy. This indictment over the documents in Mar-a-Lago and all other stuff, the federal, that's something, right? Just from an evidentiary standpoint, what he's been charged with. I mean, what we know the evidence is, like, this isn't a guess, right? Like, I just read the indictment. Right, and just what's in there alone is damning, right? And you can try to sit there and be like, oh, it's just because you're a liberal, whatever. But this is like, the law is the law, right? Like, this isn't about, like, you can take away whoever the person is. Like, if you read what the law is, and then you look at the evidence that you have regarding the defendant, right, and the words that came out of his mouth and the pictures that we like.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
And the number of times they tried to give him a chance to say, hey, can you make us not have to deal with this?
Yes.
And he was the grouchy old man who refused to cut his lawn.
But then you've got his own statements when he's interviewed by Bret Baier on Fox.
Yeah. Which were so meandering. Like, they weren't documents. They were just papers. Okay. I don't know if you know what documents are.
Right.
And this, I think that's...
And he says, like, because he goes and he says... Right, well, they wanted the document, but I needed more time, right, to figure out what.
God!
Right, like so. I said we had to hold on to them so we could figure out what we're going through, right? But it's just like, look, I mean, you didn't file an extension with the
right. I mean, I don't like who said this. It was on CNN, Fox, or MSNBC, but they basically said, you don't get to tell the government that doesn't fit my timeline. I've got to go play golf.
Right, but that's essentially what he did.
Yeah,
and he openly acknowledges that on fucking live television for everybody to see.
In front of an audience that is typically friendly.
If you want to sit there and call me a Trump basher, hater, whatever, fine. I don't like the guy. But taking all that away, like, he's got a problem. Now, can a deal be worked out? Can you, whatever? If I were him, right, like, I would let this die down a little bit, right, till we get closer to the next court date, and then I would start saying, like, back channel, how can we plead this out?
He won't do that. You're smart and you're a lawyer.
He won't do that. He won't do that. And I think it's good because what he's going to count on is he knows the quandary that he's putting the DOJ in. You've got a former president that you've indicted, that you're going to take to trial. The timing is going to come around the election, and the pressure is going to build to remove the thumb of the DOJ from the election, right? And so, and you can't have a candidate, like, if you don't have the balls to take that candidate out of the game, right, by either banning him because he's been charged, making a rule, whatever. And you don't even have a mechanism, so I won't even say it's about gumption, but because you don't have that mechanism to remove him from this, and you could argue they dragged their feet, they took too long, and now the timing is bad. So now it's like you got to step off and allow this to run its course, right? Like, you got to allow, and if he wins the nomination, then this is going to have to be set aside, right, until he's out, right? You know, I don't know what I mean, because that's a lot that should probably be the logical approach that the DOJ takes, right? And a lot of people aren't going to like that, going back to the multi-tier justice system, but that's just the reality of what you're dealing with.
This is the perfect example of multi-tier justice system, because if you or I hate when it's you or I, but if you or I had classified documents, which to my knowledge you don't, I'm certain I do not. Nope. But if we did, and the government said, "Hey, you got to give this back to us," and we stalled for a year and a half. We're not getting cajoling and multiple efforts. Come on, let's not make a big deal out of this. And I got to throw out a few things. One of Trump's arguments was, I have to go through these boxes. I've got some of my golf shirts in there. And I just tried to image Donald Trump going through boxes like it was a normal person moving.
Yeah.
This dude has not opened a document box on his own in a long time. I won't even try to quantify that.
No, here's the weird thing about it, though. There were pictures of boxes where they did have shirts in them.
I didn't see that.
So,
okay, I've got boxes with shirts in them.
But, but they were intermixed with documents. So I don't understand, why is that even a thing?
I might have that too. You've seen me travel from project to project.
That doesn't surprise me at all. But I just, with him, so... his whole situation, especially with these federal charges, he's in a tough spot. I think the smart move would be to plea it out as early as you can, get it behind you, and
the trial date was set for fairly soon. It's like a month away or a month and a half away. Now,
was it a trial date?
There was a trial date set. Now, it's set, meaning put in the docket. And now he'll have a chance to kick it down the road, and I think all money is on that he will do that. But the whole Brett Baier thing was awesome because finally Fox was legit pushing back. And he clearly did not like it, but knew he couldn't just run away like he would love to. And I don't like Brett Baier. I think Brett Baier is really exposed for the fact that he was one of the big election deniers early on because that was good for ratings. And now it's like, oh, fuck. He's got to backpedal. Now Fox wants to look tough on Trump. And it will be interesting to see how it plays out because they're trying to salvage their audience. They fired Tucker Carlson. They've got a lot to juggle. And they're kind of reaping what they've sown because they stoked this fire and now it's like, all right, here you are. Your base is so aggressively, some of your base is so aggressively against anything that's said against Trump. And then the rest of it is so tired of Trump that they want to move on. I don't even know what the balance is right now.
Well, and Fox is in an interesting position because what we know is, who's the head of Fox?
Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch told Trump, look, we're not backing you. We're done. Too much. Too crazy. Too far. And Rupert Murdoch has Fox, the Wall Street Journal,
Washington. No, that's
a few other outlets, maybe the Inquirer, something like that.
I don't know. Yeah.
But he's got a few outlets, and basically none of those outlets are really being very favorable to Trump.
Correct.
Right. If there's some sort of agreement about something that Joe Biden did, then okay, fine, or alignment, but they're not supporting him. But the reason why they're in an interesting situation, or at least Rupert Murdoch is, Trump's got a massive lead over DeSantis, right?
Yes.
57-27 or something along those lines.
No, it's huge.
But it's a 20-plus point lead.
And the rest of the field makes up like 4% or something.
Right. I think the combined percentage of the rest of the field is like 7.
Okay. Sounds about right.
Chris Christie, Nikki Haley.
The guy who I don't even know, the tech guy whose name I forget, the Indian guy.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Want to try to butcher his name. That Will Hurd guy out of Texas and, a few other people. But so the problem that Fox has is they pull their support. They're putting, they're trying to put it behind DeSantis or whatever. He's not doing great right now, but you have to, the funny thing is, though, because I did the math on this looking at the polls, even if you took everybody else out of the race and just left Trump and DeSantis, Trump would still have, I believe, like a 15-point lead over DeSantis.
Okay.
Right now,
I believe that. Here.
Now, I think, can DeSantis close that gap? Maybe. it's still
DeSantis
early.
can also fuck up because we've seen the more you put the light on that guy, the worse it gets.
Right, and it seems as though after his big announcement and everything else, he has toned down his visibility. What did I say all along though? Like I think he announced a little too early. Still,
yeah.
Right. If I were him, I would be making my announcement right about now. I would have been very quiet throughout, leading up to that time. Right, over the last, like probably once, the election was over and everything else. I probably would have kept very quiet. The main reason why is let Trump hang himself.
Yeah.
Right? And let some of these, Nikki Haley, right? Nikki Haley is out here just saying whatever. She's taking slogans from MAGA 3-4 years ago and throwing them out there, right? And, making a statement how she, just saying ridiculous things I'm not even going to repeat because she's desperate. I don't know. I forget where I was going with that. But.
I'm glad because I kind of want to move on because there's so many other things going on, and I want to really quickly, or maybe not so quickly, touch on Juneteenth. We talked about last week, and during the week, or on the day, Ted Cruz tweeted something that was actually respectful and responsible. And he talked. I forget the exact tweet. Was basically, today we celebrate the day when federal troops rolled into Galveston and officially ended slavery in America. This is a day of remembrance, or something to that effect. Now, not a fan of Ted Cruz. I've mocked the guy brutally, publicly and privately. But at least he had the decency and the good sense to say the right thing. And if you want to call it bullshit, I'll probably agree with you. But I have a bigger problem with people who can't even get the bullshit right. Enter Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley said, Juneteenth is a day where we celebrate something about America, and basically Christianity is our religion, and this is where slavery came to die. That is Representative Josh Hawley of Missouri. I'm going to shut the fuck up right now.
I mean, so Josh, when you say slavery came here to die, did you mean it came to live a very slow and very prosperous death until it was kind of forced to die after a few 100 years? I don't know, man. There's not, like, it's a dumb statement.
Sure.
I don't know if there's a whole lot of analysis that needs to go into it, right? It was clearly a statement that was meant to get a reaction.
Sure.
We're labeling us a Christian nation. Yep. Which I don't have a problem with. But again, like we have this church and state, and we have this whole thing about religious freedom, and then yet you're saying religious freedom as long as you're Christian is what it feels like, right, Josh? Sure. So I don't know, man. I hate because that in and of itself is a distraction, right? And not that he's thrown that up as a distraction to keep your attention away from this conspiracy of whatever, but it's just another.
It's dog whistle too, though, right?
It is, but it's literally there just to stir the pot. That's what it's just like. Let's whip him up into a frenzy.
And he's doing it in front of a group of people that he knows will not hold him accountable.
Exactly.
I mean, if he doesn't represent Ferguson, Missouri, he represents another part of Missouri. I frankly don't know exactly.
Right,
but I got to guess.
It's not even about. They agree with him, right? They support him.
Absolutely,
they back it. It's not even about
no, exactly. That's my point.
The idea of holding accountable is so far down the.
In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's like here's how I keep my boys.
Yes,
on my side.
That is different. That is his accountability, right? Continue to fight the fight. And when he says that, that's basically him saying, "Hey, I'm still fighting the fight, boys." Like, he's doing it.
He's still fighting the fight for the oppressed white American Christian, male.
So
fuck him.
Yeah, exactly. And Ted Cruz, it's also like, all right.
I'm not patting Ted Cruz on the back. The biggest
use it as a comparison.
The biggest compliment I'm trying to give him is, okay, I think you're a douche and an idiot, but at least you know how to not completely fuck up. Congratulations, Ted.
I mean, you're also saying that to the guy who, when the power went out in Texas, put himself
Mexico.
and his family on a plane to Cancun.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, had no shame about it.
And
trip was already planned,
right?
So had to go.
He's such a douche. Again, if anyone is taking this as me becoming a Ted Cruz fan, I have misrepresented myself, and I want to clearly state that is not the case.
I mean, it's the same guy who fired a fully automatic M4 and then, put a couple magazines through it, and then cooked bacon on the barrel of the gun.
Ted Cruz?
Yeah.
I thought that was, what's his name, Rick Perry.
No, that was Ted.
It was Ted Cruz? Okay. I'm surprised he had him for.
It wasn't his.
I know. How does that? Cooked bacon. What a douche. All right. So, Justice Alito, I do want to touch on this because it's kind of a big deal, and it also will provide a bit of a segue. Maybe this is naivety on my part, but I did not think about how much lobbying and soliciting towards the Supreme Court goes on. But both Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito have gotten some pretty ugly things exposed about them. And that's a much bigger deal than some organization throwing a bunch of campaign money behind a Josh Hawley. These are Supreme Court justices. They have been approved. They are lifetime appointees, and they change our country more than any sitting member of Congress.
Like singularly, yeah.
Singularly, yes.
Right. Yeah, so, Alito was on a plane,
Boat, fancy, like a...
No, I thought he was on a private jet.
Maybe both are true. There was definitely a yacht in there somewhere.
Well, I know there was definitely a private jet story as well. Because they were flying from one place to the other, and someone said, "Well, why are you on this plane?" And it was like because there was an extra seat, something like that.
Right? Yeah, he claimed that the seat wasn't going to get used if I didn't use it, so it was offered to me, and I flew with this billionaire to do something. Yes, that is correct.
I had to take one for the team, but I think it should be a big story, should be a bigger story. But, Republicans don't really want to fuck with the court right now.
Sure.
Because they've got favorable numbers. And so, some of the stuff that's being proposed is expanding the court, which is just bad.
That is a terrible idea.
Right? Expanding the court is bad. Democrats want to do it. Everybody listen. You're pissed off, so you're looking at the easiest, lowest hanging fruit, and I'm telling you, expanding the Supreme Court is not it, right? You're gonna do it. You're gonna do it now, okay? So maybe if you're lucky, Biden is able to get one person through, maybe, right?
Sure.
Because you don't really have
what
the
do you
numbers.
expand it to? 11? What's the number?
I don't know. You've got 9 now, so
right.
Exactly.
It's got to be 13, it's got to be an odd number, right?
So,
I guess it does, yeah.
It's you have to figure out. Sorry,
slight distraction going on in the studio that will not be mentioned.
But so you've got this idea of expansion, whether it's 11 or 13 or whatever. If you don't have the numbers in the Senate to be able to get your candidate through, right? Whoever you want to add, and all they're going to do, they're going to fight and they're going to stall, right? Until and that's the other thing too. If you expand it now, right? You've got a very short amount of time to fill those seats, right? And you can try to rush it and everything else, but all they're going to do is drag their feet. Mitch McConnell knows exactly what to do, even though he's in a minority position.
He's proven he knows how to stall a Supreme Court nomination.
Right. I mean, we know that he could do it. So the problem is, if you do this and you're not able to fill all the seats or what have you, because you can have empty seats on the Supreme Court. We've done it. We've had it recently when Scalia died.
Right.
So...
No, it opens a can of worms.
Because then immediately what happens is they stall until they get their person in, and then if they have the numbers, now you've got, a
9-6,
right?
Yeah.
It's 9-3 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so that's a bad idea.
But Alito should be investigated and held accountable if he in fact broke laws. And talk about impeachment.
We don't even know if they're investigating Clarence Thomas. Right,
sure.
And there were the Clarence Thomas, I think, was way worse in terms of just scale
And
of
money taken.
Multiple trips on yachts, multiple trips on the private jet, right? The guy bought Clarence Thomas's mother's house.
Put a kid through school or something,
just
right?
Forget
the details of that.
Investigate that, and then get to Alito, right? Or I'm sure
investigate both. Again, this is one of those things.
I will take Clarence Thomas being investigated and Alito being swept under the rug. Multi-tier justice system. Remember? And I'm not saying that
race or because of
no, it has nothing to do with
visibility?
race. No, I mean it just has to do with the
Scale.
Scale.
Okay.
Right, Alito. If you want to make the argument of it was the person who was going to fly in that seat didn't make it, right? So the seat was empty and it had already been whatever. Okay, fine. It's bullshit, but fine. I don't know what was going on with the yacht or the
I'm sorry. I was reading
like
other things, so this was. But yeah, he took a lot of gifts, and I guess my biggest point I want to get on the show was that I always ignored the manipulation and the lobbying towards Supreme Court justices, and that is probably the area we should be paying the most attention to, because they are lifetime appointees, they have incredible power, and literally, in certain cases, if you can swing one or two, you can change history.
Yeah, I mean, that sounded very dramatic, and it's probably true in some parallel world, but it's not accurate here because this has been going on.
Well, that doesn't mean it's called out.
Okay. It does get called out, but it doesn't get traction.
That's kind of my point, though, is that that should be at the top of the list, and it's not.
Agreed, and it's great to make that statement, but the problem is that you are so far down the rabbit hole. Oh, right, paying attention to people need to go to fucking prison is what needs to happen. Right, if I have the money and the connections, I can gain access to the Supreme Court and influence them in their decision-making process. That can't be allowed. Right? And my frustration comes with this has been something that has been at issue for 20 plus years. Right?
Yeah. Probably longer.
Probably longer, but I know some of these some of the various stories, and because there have been actual prosecutions around lobbying of Supreme Court members, right? People who took it too far in their lobbying efforts, and there are other situations where there were no charges, but you've got record of a Supreme Court justice being, basically wined and dined by ex-lobbyists, and then shortly thereafter a court decision made where the decision comes out in favor of that lobbyist. Can't necessarily directly connect the two, but people bring things up like this all the time. What about this situation? What about that situation? What about this situation? And it's out there. The stories are there. You could find them, right? The cases are there, right? I could see them. I've read some of them, but it's like no one really reacts. The stories are there, and it's like literally everyone's like, okay,
for lack of a better word, it's not sexy,
right? And so the issue is that it's not sexy now. It's not. When will it be? And so, how do you address it when there's no demand for it to be addressed? Right now, people are saying it right now today, right this week because the story with Alito came up this week. But when's the last time anyone really thought about Clarence Thomas and the nonsense that he was into, right? And the Crow guy,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, people have already forgot about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's someone on Capitol Hill who's still diligently working very, very hard. And
probably frustrated as hell.
Mad as hell because no one is listening to him or her. But that's where my frustration is that this isn't new. Right? Now we have evidence of it, and we're still not doing anything.
I agree. And again, this is where investigations and potential impeachment should be relevant because you're talking about lifetime appointees who have a responsibility to their oath.
The question that we have to be asking is why?
Why
is this not getting more traction? Why aren't people livid beside themselves, pissed at Clarence Thomas, at Alito? right? Why aren't they wanting to fucking comb through all of their records and have them? You know what I mean? Like this should be produce it all, or we're coming after all of you with pitchforks.
And honestly, if you brought up the idea of a lot of left wingers saying we should expand the court, no, we should hold the court accountable. So if you're right, the MSNBCs and the Young Turks, this should be the thing they're screaming from the mountaintops. Like, oh, you want us to get the Supreme Court control back? How about we hold accountable guys who violated their oath of office? And I'm not sure if Thomas did. I'm not sure if Alito did. I haven't seen any of the evidence. But that should be the focus. Not let's change the number on the court. And we've talked about this before. How many times have the Democrats said, we're going to change the rules now because it helps us now, and it comes back and kicks them in the balls, and they're like, whoa, this is bullshit. Yeah, it's bullshit you created.
Yep.
So, all right, man, we could do that. This probably won't go away, and there's two other things I really think we need to talk about. One of them is not maybe as important, but it's a thing with you and I, and I saw you on Twitter, and that is, RFK Jr. was on Joe Rogan's show, and I don't really want to get into details of the discussion. I kind of want to talk about the larger issue of, like, Joe Rogan has a huge platform, and whenever he puts people on there that say stuff that, mostly when it rankles the left, it goes both ways, but mostly when it rankles the left, and RFK Jr. is definitely in that category because he's an anti-vaxxer, and Joe Rogan and RFK Jr. got together and talked about the vaccine, and frankly, neither of them are qualified to talk about vaccines because neither of them know shit about medical anything. But I do think there's a balance here, and that is, if you want to say that Joe Rogan shouldn't platform RFK Jr., my argument would be he has a platform. He doesn't need Joe Rogan. Yes, it helps him to a degree, but we've spoken to people who've been platformed by Joe Rogan who were literally nobodies until they got onto his show. And those people get a chance to make a name for themselves. I don't think that applies to RFK Jr., and I do have a fundamental problem with the idea of you shouldn't platform people, because you don't like what they're saying. At the same time, it's not completely, it's not fake, because there are people who say crazy shit, and you put them on a platform like Joe Rogan's. There's plenty of people out there. You could probably make a case I'm one of them, who hear what he says about supplements and about training and about whatever. You go, oh, this guy knows that. Now he's talking about vaccines. I'm going, okay, you don't know shit. But there's a whole lot of people that bought into the first two that don't push back on the third.
So, yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I really don't have an issue with anyone being platformed or not. Because it all sounds like censorship. It all sounds like you don't like what this person says. So you slap a label on it as being dangerous or misinformation,
anti-this,
or
anti-that,
racist, or anti-LGBT, whatever. Because, you don't like it. It goes against the things that you believe, so you don't want to hear it. And then you try to make these connections to it being dangerous or what have you, right? And I get what you're doing there. It's like, look, if they continue to put out this bad information, people are going to hear it, and they're not smart enough to know to not listen to this. So we're going to have these people that are listening to this, and then it creates a danger for everyone. So we're trying to do the thing for the greater good by silencing this particular narrative that we don't like because we feel it's dangerous. I get where you're coming from, but the power you're wielding in that moment to do that is way more dangerous than any virus could be, right? That power in and of itself of censoring someone and telling someone that they cannot use their voice is a virus that is more deadly than COVID could ever wish to be, because it not only puts people in danger, right? Because if it once corrupted, that type of power of censorship and control, like we've seen what happens in China and Russia and in communist countries, right? People die, right? And it also basically kills your democracy. It kills the idea of freedom. So it's extremely dangerous and deadly to sit there and say the thing you have to say you can't say because we don't like it, but we'll tell you it's because it's dangerous, right? And the people aren't smart enough to decide for themselves, so we then need to decide for them what they can and cannot be privy to, right? We may not agree. We may think that taking fucking ivermectin or whatever is stupid and ridiculous. And, look, here's the other thing, too. I took the vaccine. I took 2 boosters. And then after that, I stopped because there were some concerns about some inflamed heart stuff with some of the boosters. And medically, being African-American, got to be careful with the heart stuff, right? Family, has a history of high blood pressure, all that other stuff. So stopped after a booster or 2. I don't have an issue. I don't think that RFK has the slightest idea what he's talking about. I think he's regurgitating information. I think he's he's improperly analyzing different medical reviews and medical journals and things like that, and relaying the information in I won't say disingenuous, but an inaccurate way. And that's not good. That is problematic for the people who believe it. But the problem is those people need to be smart enough to be able to see through the bullshit. And if not, then we can't legislate away stupidity, right?
Clearly, we cannot.
I know we really want to, but you cannot you people from doing stupid things that hurt the greater good. Right,
True.
You just.
But we're in a spiral in the wrong direction too, because it just keeps getting worse and worse.
But people keep getting dumber and dumber, and then we keep saying, "Well, we have to protect people from themselves even more and more and more." Sure. And that is how you end up getting into a situation like a communist China or Russia, where the government then comes in and says, "Don't worry, we'll take care of you because you can't do it yourself," right? Then you start taking pages out of the little guy's book down in North Korea, right? And that's why I can't, look, you may not like what he's saying, and if people honestly listen to it and believe it, then we got to get to a point where that's on them, right? And so you got to be selfish and you got to protect yourself because you are surrounded by a lot of stupid people who will believe anything from any fucking body. And yes, it puts you at risk, but what puts you even more at risk is taking your freedom and the government then controlling you, right, and your body autonomy and your freedom in every sense of the word, to the point where you then just become expendable.
What do you mean?
Which means that, right now, you've got human rights and you've got constitutional rights.
All right. So when you say, look, I've talked about the Reichstag's fire decree, which, if you don't know what it is, it was basically what allowed the Nazis to say, we're suspending due process because there are enemies of the state out there. And it's not going to affect you unless you're an enemy of the state. But we're going to make sure that those folks can't hide behind our laws, and then those laws become irrelevant. Sorry to interrupt, but
that's where, you have to play the movie out. You have to look further down the road. I get what you did. Yes, COVID was a serious thing, and you wanted more people to buy into the vaccines. I get it. Right now, you've got these anti-vaxxers, and they somehow manage, these dipshit, flat earth, anti-vaxxer motherfuckers somehow get enough traction to where they now have a candidate running for president of the United States spewing all this bullshit. Yeah, that all sucks.
Yeah.
Right? It does. But problem is, and it's really 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Right? It is dangerous for RFK to be saying some of the shit that he's saying. Because
censorship is much more dangerous to me.
Right, but censorship is much more dangerous. Now, and the reason why I have a problem with a lot of what RFK is saying is because some of the stuff that he's saying, the connections between vaccines and autism, right? There are multiple reports that refute that. We know that is bullshit. And yet he clung on to that for a long time. He pivoted away from vaccine and autism because he was proven wrong. He did so very quietly, but it timed up very well for him to jump on vaccines and COVID.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, the vaccines and autism thing, I actually know the history of way too well. It has to do with a preservative that was used in vaccines years ago called thimerosal, which contained mercury. and people said mercury exposure, which does have psychological effects. So mercury is a bad thing. Now, thimerosal may or may not have had sufficient amounts of mercury.
When I got really sick, I had tested positive for mercury poisoning.
But you got really sick because you took a supplement.
Had heavy metals in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And mercury was one of them.
And it's a really bad one. It fucks with your head and fucks up with your body in a lot of ways. I mean, we've talked about lead poisoning in the past. Lead poisoning is like the little brother of mercury.
But
I mean, the term mad is a hat. Yeah. In fact, can we move on from RFK because what else is there to say?
It's fine. I thought you were going to make a point.
I just wanted to make sure that people understood that he said those things. That was a long since debunked, theory, but it stuck with him for a long time, and it was debunked in the 90s, maybe early 2000s.
Yeah.
But that was the whole thing. Was parents weren't getting their kids vaccinated because of autism. Autism numbers are on the rise in large part because we've reclassified how we define autism. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I don't mean to minimize it. I have one friend who has 3 kids, all of them on the spectrum. 50 years ago, they would have just considered poorly behaved children. Today, they're on the spectrum. And when they had to find a bad guy for causing it, they chose vaccines. And they chose thimerosal. But we're at risk of going along, and the next topic is something that has been all over everything for the last several days. And I think it really shines a really ugly light on us as a society. And I'm speaking of the Titan submarine, the Titan submersible. I don't even know what to call it. Incident, event. It's when you put your mind in. So if you don't know this, I don't know where the fuck you've been. But in a submersible vessel was going down to look at the wreckage of the Titanic, and it apparently went deeper than any other venture of this type had.
No, you're not. You're...
Is that wrong? I heard that.
So this is what happened. So you've got what was the company's name? Ocean
Gate.
Ocean Gate. Yes. Ocean Gate. Ocean Gate. So you've got this company, Ocean Gate, and their whole shtick was that they would take you down to see the wreckage of the Titanic. Well, the wreckage of the Titanic is very, very deep at the bottom of the ocean. And so if you don't know anything about the ocean, getting down to depths that deep is very dangerous because you have the pressure of the water above you, right? Like, so it takes a very specialized vehicle, submersible, that is very specifically designed to withstand that sort of pressure for that amount of time. And there's a lot of science and engineering that needs to go into building that vessel so that it can hold up. Because if something fails, any part of it fails, then, and the pressure on the outside starts to merge with the pressure on the inside, then...
If it breaches, that pressure is coming in. And
right.
It ain't going to... And it would take...
So, hold on, because you're going to go engineering. So we're just going
to about to go engineering.
Right. So what happens is all that pressure comes rushing in, and the speed and the power and the energy that creates makes basically an implosion where you explode from the inside out, just for lack of a better word. But everything would be destroyed. Like Mythbusters years ago did an experiment with this, where they took like a dummy stuffed with like pig and cow parts, and submerged it down. I think, I don't know, it was like 200 feet or something like that, and the thing exploded. Right. Yeah. Now they used.
And this is unprotected, but yeah.
Right. Well, they use one of those old timey diver suits with the helmet.
What's a Cuba Gooding Jr. Dark De Niro movie?
Yeah. With the hose attached. and the cage front. But they use one of those, and then you see the thing explode at like 200 feet. Right. Like, so there's very special ways that you do this. Now, mind you, the Titanic is at like, I don't know,
6,000,
4 or 5, 6,000 depth, something along those lines. Now, one of the issues is that we know the glass on this submersible was rated for like 1,300 meters or something along those lines, and they needed to get down to like 4,000 or 5,000 meters, right? Like, so think about what we just said. If any part of this fails, then you die, right? Yep. Because it's basically an instant almost implosion that creates a whole lot of heat. They said it's so hot it would be like the equivalent of the surface of the sun. And then everything kind of disperses. Now, the guy who said it, I'm going to take his word because he was some sort of...
Yeah, the heat would... All right, I won't engineer on you. Go ahead.
All right. So, but that... So, it's an instant relatively painless death, right? I would imagine
Sure, yeah,
probably, you
horrifying.
Probably,
You're
right? Like you probably have
boom!
about a 30-second window where you're like, oh, this is not going to go well, right? And then it doesn't. So the issue was the founder of this Ocean Gate. We know for a fact now that he cut a lot of corners in designing this machine, this submersible, and then it was filled with people. He was charging $250,000, which that flew you out to a boat out in international waters, and then you got in the submersible, and could hold 5 people.
Sure.
It would take you down, look at the Titanic. You would come back up. Yeah, great. You just flew $250,000 to go 2 miles under the ocean. But again, he cut a lot of corners. He got sued. There were whistleblowers. There were people. There's all this other stuff. He even did a thing where it was on like 60 Minutes or something, and you got to see it. And I don't know how anybody watching that 60 Minutes or just seeing it, right, based off what I saw, like my black ass is not getting on that, right? Like I'm not like I put that in the white people shit category. Like the shit that white people do, which is like go look at the Titanic. We know how the Titanic ended, right? Like the big fucking iceberg. I've never seen the movie. I've never seen the movie because I don't give a fuck about the Titanic, right? It's a very interesting story, and that is it.
It's an absolute trash movie, by the way.
Right, I'm trying to go down 2 miles to go look at wreckage, right? Like the only thing that would be remotely close for a person like me is like, hey, we found the slave ship that your ancestors came over on. Do you want to go see it down at the bottom of the ocean? No, the fuck I do not.
I was just saying, would you?
No, I wouldn't.
Exactly.
Right? I don't want to see the Titanic. I don't want to see a slave ship. I don't give a fuck if it's a fucking thing of gold. Bring it up. Call me when you do. Right? Like, so the idea that these motherfuckers look and saw the same thing that I saw and were comfortable giving this guy $250,000 to sit in that and go down there, child, please. There is no, I can't, like, and people are like, you don't feel bad? No. Because the guy from Ocean Gate, he cuts corners, so there, like, you've got reckless, negligent behavior off the rip, so I don't feel bad for him, right? The only one I feel bad for is the son of the one guy, right, who he apparently he dragged his 19-year-old son along to his death. That is terribly unfortunate, but then everybody else there, the other 3 people there, you were doing this, like, they weren't explorers.
No.
Like, these guys weren't explorers, they weren't trailblazers. They wanted to show off their wealth. Right, they had a weird obsession with the stupid American thing, but this wasn't trail. James Cameron, of all people, you want to talk about an explorer and a trailblazer? I'm sorry, I'll put James Cameron at the top. He's been down there 31 times.
I saw that
in a machine that he helped design.
Oh, I thought he was on one of these guys.
I think no, he wasn't the one.
I don't think he went to that depth.
No. He went, like, James Cameron, when he was doing research for the Titanic, he himself was in the submersible that he was in.
Okay.
Like, shows you, like, if you just saw that.
First of all, he didn't go nearly as deep, by the way.
Yes, he did, Jim. He went to the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Then I misunderstood something I read. But go on, because I've got...
I don't know, like, your sources suck. But, like, so if I'm going to take James Cameron's word on this, because the dude's been down there 31 times, and I'm sorry, if you're talking about going to that depth, right, to where the Titanic is, because a lot of this was when they were doing research for the movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so I'll take his word for it, right? And if James Cameron, the guy who's done this 31 times successfully because he's, still in one piece, says, like, look, man, there were plenty of red flags, and I didn't know the guy. I tried to reach out to him, and he blew me off, right? And then you got these people who were just, like, James Cameron is the explorer. He's the expert. These people weren't that. They were just trying to do something to say, hey, I did this one time.
So I think there's a really good analogy to this. This, to me, is like people who want to climb Mount Everest. Now, this is a much lazier version, much more expensive and much more lazy version of that because you're not doing the work. But do you know how many people died on Mount Everest so far this year? Or do you want to venture a guess? I actually looked it up, so this time I actually have some data.
I would
in 2023.
Say in 2023, where are we? We are in June.
We're in June.
I don't know, 50?
Lower. 12 dead, confirmed, 5 more missing.
Oh, okay.
So, but anyway, 3 times as many people as died. Now, I'm not trying to diminish anyone's pain and whatever, but when you do stuff that is risk-based, thrill-based, whatever, part of that is if you do a death-defying thing, well, sometimes death wins.
Yeah, this is to me different than that, though.
Okay, I want to hear why.
Because here's why for me, it's the negligence aspect. Okay, like it's one thing to go climb Mount Everest.
You're saying on the part of the submersible,
on the design of the submersible, things like that. But there were also red flags for the people. Like, again, just looking at the thing that they were going down. Like, I'm not an engineer and I'm not an oceanographer or whatever, but there were enough. Just watching it on 60 Minutes, I'm like, what? No.
Have you ever seen what climbing Mount Everest looks like?
Yeah, Jim.
Okay.
Why do you think I just said fucking 50 people to this point? Because to me, the thought of climbing Mount Everest seems insane.
I watched the thing, I think it was on Real Sports. And I mean, I had heard about it. And I thought, oh, well, people get elevation sickness, whatever. They're like shimmying across ladders, like 50-mile gaps over a cavern that's, 200
and so
feet deep.
My point is that it's not a good analogy. These are different. Like, that's a whole different type of risk.
Sure.
And there's a lot of preparation and training that you're doing for that, right? Like, you have to, like, you have to learn.
That's kind of what I'm saying, though, is those Everest guys are crazy, but they have training and they have whatever. These guys just basically want to do a guided tour.
Oh, because you said it was an analogy, so maybe
analogy in terms of like, loss of life. Because everyone's treating, like, I heard people talking about how are we going to change laws to make this safe in the future? I'm like, don't.
Well, no. So I do have a thing there. Because we have a major problem there. Because, listen, you know why I have no issue flying? You know how many fucking regulations there are as it relates to flying?
A lot. Right? We both fly a lot in our lives.
Right? But, I mean, just to get in the fucking airport is a whole thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? With this, though, it's different. That thing had to go out in the international waters, and he wasn't meeting any standard because he didn't have to.
I was going to say, because there's no standards. He's in international waters.
And my thing is, if I'm going to go do that, right, like, because here's the thing. When you go fly, all you hear about is FAA regulations and this and that and what has to be done and what you can and can't do based on rules, laws, regulations, guidance, oversight. Right?
Yeah.
And to a degree, they hang their hat on that. Like, listen, flying is dangerous. You're getting on a giant thing filled with fuel going up in the air. Things happen. But we don't have that many crashes. And here's why, because we're safe. Right? Yeah. They hang their hat on that. This guy wasn't doing that.
Right.
He wasn't promoting it as being safe. Right? And kind of joked about the waiver. Right? Like, it made that a whole big thing. And my thing is, like, those are red flags, people. And this isn't I'm not saying this after the fact. I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking things, right? Like, I'm kind of a fraidy cat, right? Like, I have no desire to go fucking climb a mountain or go put a flag at the top. Like, that seems insane. I'm not going to swim in the ocean with sharks. I don't give a fuck if you put me in a cage. Fuck you. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not going.
I'm on the same boat as you.
Right?
I'm on the same boat of bad choice of terms.
Yeah, man. But, like, so for me, like, these are, like, the reason why this is so unforgivable is that the negligence factor and the recklessness factor of the CEO of OceanGate and what he was willing to do to go chase a buck. But then you also have the fact that these people were just so blinded by the idea of what they were doing, they didn't actually look at and think about what they were doing. They didn't ask the right questions. I'm paying $250,000. Then I'm going to ask to see specs. I'm going to ask to see safety records. I'm going to ask to say, what standard are you meeting to take me down 2 miles under the fucking ocean where if something goes wrong, we are instantly dead? Home slice.
Yeah, well,
and if we're not instantly dead and we're still fucked, then that means we have a slow and awful death. So I'm sorry. I need you to show me a whole lot of shit before I hand you a check for $250,000 fucking dollars and you put my life on the line. And if I'm crazy for thinking that.
Let me ask this. Hold on. Does the 200? So if they offered you a chance to do this for free, I know what you would say.
You know what I would say?
You say fuck off.
I would absolutely. Say fuck off.
I'm just saying that the $250,000 shows the class of people who are the economic class of people.
But like,
regardless,
even if you're saying I can do this for free,
you get a Sam Alito ride.
Right? Hey, we got an open spot.
You want it?
I'm gonna call Sam. I'm gonna call Sam.
You want the Steve? You want the spot? It's open. It's free.
Go ahead. Call Sam. Right? I need that
Not
adjustment.
A fucking chance you're doing that. By the way, nor am I.
And if somehow you were even able to get me on the fence, every question that I just said, with a million others in my head, will be asked, and if they're not answered to my satisfaction, you can say, "Oh, you're not an expert." I know enough that I would go fucking have one standing right next to me when we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
So I would go get somebody from the fucking Navy that has been on a submarine that knows about fucking boats. I'm like, does this check out to you before I go put my life on the line and get on that thing to go under the fucking sea with fucking Ariel 2 miles deep? I think it's crazy that not every single person didn't ask all those questions, and then when that guy wouldn't have been able to answer them, or the answers he gave were clearly bullshit, they didn't say fuck right off. That's my issue with all of it.
That is completely reasonable. I do have an issue with a lot of people, though. What you've basically, I don't want to misrepresent you. You're here, so I'll say it in front of you. This is some dumb white people shit or white people shit, whatever you just said.
It is.
Okay, I'm not arguing that, but it definitely is. And there's lots of people out there going, fuck you, you got what you deserved. Okay, you can make that case, but it's a shitty take, and I really have a problem with people who I know who are so easily offended when you use a wrong pronoun that are gleeful. And I'm thinking of one person in particular that we both know who's gleefully putting shit about this on Facebook and whatever. And I'm like, dude, you sound like such trash right now. You're the guy who told me if someone wore a costume that offended you at Halloween, that they should be just destroyed, that they should have no career ever again. And you're going to go, haha, a billionaire died. That's a shit take. I'm not saying the guy wasn't making a terrible decision. We've both said this multiple times in the last 5 minutes. You couldn't... I don't know what the number is that it would take to get me on that thing, but it's a big fucking number.
You know what? I
know I wouldn't pay to do it.
So let me explain this to you, right? And I was explaining this to someone else. This is why I'm being genuine in what I say. 1992 Die Hard comes out. The original Die Hard comes out, or 89?
89 for sure.
89, original Die Hard comes out. Watch original Die Hard. You know what happened after I saw Die Hard? But
don't.
Maybe you don't. Okay, so after I saw Die Hard.
All right, how old were you? Because
I was 9.
You saw it when it came out? Okay, wow.
I was 9. Well, it was like, we saw it on VHS, but it was around
Either
the time.
Either way, it's an R-rated movie and you were 9.
Yeah, my parents.
Explain a few things. Okay.
So after I see Die Hard, I basically refuse.
Please don't tell me you try to tie a rope.
Oh. No. Okay. I refuse to do anything without shoes on. Right? Because I'm just
I definitely do not know this story.
Yeah, so there was a long period of time where I would sleep at friends' house, my friend's house, and I would wear shoes. The reason why is because I'm just look, man, we got to deal with drive-bys and shit, glass, all that other stuff. I got to run. We got to run. I got to have shoes on, right? It made sense to me. It's a little extreme.
I was about to mock you, but okay, I hear that.
But I mean, look,
I was saying Hans Gruber isn't shooting Dave Finster, but okay,
bro, I mean,
she's Dave Finster. Right? Shoot the glass.
Where we lived in Texas, where I lived in Ohio, I mean, was not uncommon to not. It was very common here.
Like I said, you've brought me around.
But fast forward, right? So that is, you can kind of justify it. But when my friends' moms would be like, "Hey, you're sleeping the night. Can you please take your shoes off?" Right? So I take it serious. Then I see the movie Backdraft. I was terrified of fire and door handles for the longest time. Arachnophobia, terrified of spiders. Right? So you see where I'm going with this. Top Gun's my favorite movie. I wanted to be a pilot, rejected because I'm blind and short and wide. So I take what I saw in movies very seriously. So one of the movies that I saw when I was a kid was The Abyss. What happened in the fucking Abyss? Fucking John Connor from Terminator goes crazy under the fucking ocean, gets in a fucking submersible, tries to go kill Ed Harris, and then the submersible loses power, he sinks, he goes down, and he implodes. Right? And they did a very good job of showing what that would actually look like, and it was fucking terrifying. He exploded on the inside, and the whole thing imploded on itself and ripped apart and blew to pieces. That terrified me. So the idea that you think that me, who takes everything he sees in movies and thinks it's real, right? And then you say, hey, go get on this boat so you can be like that guy in the movie The Abyss. Go fuck yourself.
You know, the seriousness of like a catastrophic implosion is horrifying. But, and it's so easy for me to say this sitting here on dry land, a long way from water deeper than 200 feet. But I'd rather have that happen than be stuck in the bottom of the ocean just counting down the oxygen run out. I cannot imagine the horror of that.
Dude, one of my friends called me and said, of all the ways to die, he said, look, I would absolutely die for you, with you, love you. But of all the ways, if we had to go, that's the one way I could not do it with you. Because we're stuck in the bottom of the ocean. Chances are there's not going to be food. And you hungry in a situation where
I've been around you when you're hungry.
Where we're all going to die anyway. That means you're going to be the last man standing because all of us are going to get eaten
you're gonna make
before
the
you
abyss
die.
And alive happen at the same time.
Alive.
That's the movie where the people eat. Yeah. For people who don't know, that's
where the airplane crashes
in the Andes and they eat each other. Yes. All right, man. We've gone long. I'm trying to. The one I do want to do one closing thing and say that the fact that this is getting the media coverage it is, as tragic as it is for the families and the people involved, the fact that this thing is going on when I brought up another reason I brought up the Mount Everest thing is 3 times as many people have died in Mount Everest. None of us fucking knew. I didn't know until I Googled it today, right before the show. Meaning no disrespect to anyone who lost their lives or people related to them. But the fact that this story is so huge when it's not Americans, international waters, and we've got a war in Ukraine. Who knows what else is happening? And it's just, the sensationalism is so insane. It's the Titanic. It's gruesome. It's everything.
Here's the thing, though. Here's a weird.
James Cameron got involved.
Well, which I'm kind of glad he did because he offered actual useful perspective on this. Right? Like people keep wanting to minimize it because it's James Cameron.
I minimize it. The movie sucked balls.
The movie did suck balls, but he made up for it with Avatar.
I disagree with that. I think that movie sucked too.
Well, your choice of movie sucks. So, that being said, what I will say though, I lost it.
I was like, my goodness.
Sorry.
When it comes to movies, you and I have the weirdest Venn diagram ever because we either a strong overlap or an extreme difference. But all right, we're both kind of losing a little bit. Let's shut it down. If you got a closing comment, great. If not, we're done. And
Later.
We're done. We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you very much. We're done.